Husband 34, male got weird about physical affection from me 36 female, and things escalated very badly. For the first 2 years of our marriage, and after 5 years of being together, my 36 female and husband 34 male were very intimate with each other in a playful, flirty, and loving way. The fact that I was clingy had been ascertained by him a few months earlier, and he decided that he would be the one to initiate any physical contact from then on. I don't think I was or am clinging to anything. Hugs and kisses came at random intervals throughout the day, as did a few more casual touches like a hand on the shoulder, but I wasn't groping him every second of every day. I was aware that he was dealing with difficulties from a difficult background at the time, not physical abuse, but more emotional abandonment/alienation issues with his parents, so I wanted to give him space and avoid making this about me, especially since he had vowed to continue to be affectionate on a daily basis despite his difficulties, and he has done so, maybe a little less often than in the past, but we still get some love touches, which he initiated, on a daily basis, as well as more intimate acts a couple of times a week. Used to be more like 3-4 times a week, but again, I know he is going through some stuff. Just a few days ago, I got word from my employer that I had earned a major promotion and bonus. After arriving home, I was overjoyed and wrapped my arms around him, reaching his rule that contact had to be initiated by him, which I had broken. He pushed me aside and grew upset as a result of this. It wasn't an embrace in the traditional sense. Rather, it was the kind of embrace that sports teams give to one another after a big win. In spite of my best efforts, he grew upset and started shouting about how I was an abuser who had left a scar on his face and body. He asked me to go, and I agreed. I quickly packed a few things and went to a motel, not wanting things to escalate further. Apparently, after I left, he sought to contact the police and file charges, but the officers told him that a quick hug from one's wife, even if it wasn't actually requested or anticipated, was not something they would prosecute or investigate. He has now threatened to call my employer and warn them that I am an abuser who engages in misbehavior in my personal life as a result of my abuse. I'm not looking for legal advice. Rather, I'm interested as to whether he would be right in alerting my employer about what happened. My error was very costly, even though it wasn't my aim to do so. Individuals should have the freedom to choose whether or not they want people to make contact with them, and they should be able to maintain their physical independence, in my opinion. Because I would not be traumatized by a hug, this does not mean that he should not be traumatized by one. I'm prepared to embrace the possibility that he will divorce me as a consequence of this, and that I may lose other important friendships and family relationships as a result. Should I, on the other hand, be fired from my position? The nature of my occupation is working in an office with other adults, rather than with vulnerable folks. With the exception of the occasional handshake or high five, I don't and have never had physical contact with staff. Update. As a result, everything came to a head, but not in the way that I had imagined it would. While I was away at a hotel, my husband's brother, Bill, stayed with him to look after him. A phone call from my father-in-law, Bill, a few days later asked me to come home so that we could all talk. He assured me I would be safe. My husband has been having an affair with an intern at his place of employment, 21F, with whom he is over heels in love, and who he really wants to be with forever. He told BAL this shortly after I left. He wanted to portray me as the bad guy, so he started with the no-touching rule, hoping that I'd get weary of it or that I'd make a mistake and he'd use it to infer that I was an abuser, which is precisely what happened, thus portraying me as the evil guy. As well, it served as a tool for him to restrict any kinds of connection with me at the same time that he was falling out of love with me and becoming in love with his affair partner. That he made up the trauma story and isn't really going through a psychotic break, despite the fact that he's definitely undergoing some form of mental issues in order to do something so heinous. For what it's worth, he did, in a sense, express regret. So he came up with this strategy because he was so in love with the other woman and couldn't face the thought of hurting me directly by leaving me right away. And I was a little too in character when I gave him the incorrect hug, which resulted in his labeling me an abuser, making a police report, and threatening to fire me on the spot. We sat down and spoke about everything with my father-in-law serving as a mediator, and we came to the conclusion that we wanted a quick and amicable divorce. The assets are divided 50/50. There were no dogs or children there, which was a blessing. Under the circumstances, I'm sure I could make things more difficult for him, but I just want to go on with my life as soon as possible and put this whole ordeal behind me as soon as possible. I have a stable work and a good salary, and all I want from him is for me to be self-sufficient as quickly as possible, which he will provide. Thank you to everyone who took the time to leave a comment and all who sent me messages. Apologies for not responding personally to everyone, but was a bit overwhelmed. However, despite the fact that things took an unexpected turn, it was very advantageous to recognize that something unusual was taking place, and it also helped me in preparing for the truth that would soon become apparent. Thank you so much for your assistance. Story 2. My boyfriend is mad that I am choosing my coworkers over him. As a result, this is becoming a bit of a problem. My colleague asked me and a few other employees to a Christmas party. We were all females, with the exception of 2 men. I asked if I could bring my boyfriend, since none of them had seen him before, and the host said that was great, but that I should make sure he's comfortable with gift swapping so he doesn't feel left out. I went ahead and informed my boyfriend that he had been invited. A few days later, the host messages in the group chat that after giving it some thought, it's preferable to limit it to the employees since their flat is too tiny for all of us. I questioned the host's roommate if they were referring to me directly, and they stated that many of the females wanted to bring their boyfriends, and they wanted it to be a smaller group without a lot of men. I understood, but requested them to speak with the host and make sure my boyfriend couldn't attend before I uninvited him. That day, I warned my boyfriend that he could be uninvited, and described what had occurred, but that he might still be permitted to go. We ended up going out a few nights later and ran into a lot of my colleagues, all that were going to the party. My boyfriend wasn't feeling well, so he wasn't as communicative as he usually is. Some of them said hello, but for the most part, they avoided eye contact with him. He addressed it afterwards, but I didn't understand he was offended that they didn't recognize him that night. Remember, there was drink involved, and we were at a pub. Also, if he wanted to meet his pals, I was all right with accompanying him. We had to leave early since he wasn't feeling well. My colleague never responded to my inquiry. He really blew out on me this morning, telling me that I don't care about his emotions and that I don't try hard enough to spend out with him. I attempted to explain to him that they weren't trying to ignore him and that they didn't dislike him in any way, but he immediately began hurling obscenities at them and accusing them of being rude for not talking to him. He started attacking me and called me names when I attempted to protect them, since I didn't validate his sentiments. He then said that if I was not invited to a Christmas party to which he was invited, he would not go. I can appreciate his being furious about being uninvited, and I think it was a touch disrespectful, but how is this my fault? I'm not sure what more I could have done. Please tell me what else I should have done. Edit, to people who believe my colleagues are unfair for not inviting him. I was the one who brought him up. Originally, no other guests were invited, and I assume we all wanted to bring our boyfriends. I don't see any other employee stating that she is no longer attending. I can imagine him being disappointed about it, but I'm hoping we can make other things where he can easily come. They also only met twice, and both times we were all pretty drunk. They repeatedly told me how much they loved him and how lovely he was, so I don't believe it's a personal problem. Now, look at some comments. Imagine you being uninvited and the BF taking his friend's side. My experience would be a problem. Many issues going on here. Firstly, your coworker who invited you sucks for doing that. And you kind of suck for agreeing with it. You should back up your boyfriend in this case and not go to the party. Thirdly, your boyfriend getting angry and blowing up sucks. It's one thing to get mad, but dealing with it in a more mature way is another. Are you so out to lunch that you legitimately can't understand why your boyfriend is with you not having his back at all? Him being uninvited isn't your fault. You still going would be. What makes you give that conclusion?